Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
The harmony that we create in ourselves makes us powerful to shift reality, right? Like my dog has no idea that COVID's happening. Full-hearted believer in the fact that we could literally all be doing whatever we wanted. The problem is people don't know what they want. And so no matter what, we have to learn harmony within ourselves and then expand that into harmony within your environment. And then your environment will want to be doing business with you. They will want to be interacting with you. They will be attracted to you. People are losing their jobs. Great. What do we do with their energy? What's new? What's next? What's the next version of reality for us? Is that I'm facilitating the support to create creators. We are invited to pay attention to that. And it's up to us to determine how much of that is going to take over your reality. And in every single moment of your life, you've learned to be satisfied. Now, what type of person is that? Right? Like that's like the Messiah type people that we know throughout history, that every situation is glory. This is Rav Earth, and you are listening to Airey Bros Radio. Great.
Hey, Ben.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So your name's actually Richard.
Yeah.
I like the 100-mile dick thing, but now it makes a lot more sense. It makes way more sense now.
That's awesome. You want to go first, Jim?
Yeah, how was Mount Shasta, man? Saw you were once COVID happened, you kind of went up to Mount Shasta. Looks like you were living up in the mountains, having fun up there. How was all that experience for you?
Yeah, everything was super cool up there. I went up there. Actually, Seema and I went up there. We decided to go up there. We were on the beach in Santa Monica last year, and the cops came rolling by. So first of all, there was like cones and caution tape everywhere on the beach, and then the cops came rolling by with like loudspeakers, and they were like, "Get off the beach! You're no longer able to be here. You're breaking citation." And we were like, "Let's get out of here." And so we went to Mount Shasta and had a blast for a year, really connected in with nature there. And then we missed people, at least like progression and people that are hustling and doing great things in the world. And so we went searching for another place to live. And now we're down in Laguna Beach, but Mount Shasta was great.
Are there aliens there?
So I didn't see any in physical form, but the philosophy is that that's where all of the Lumerians, or a big portion of the Lumerians, disappeared to, and that they're underneath the volcano, which is Mount Shasta. And astrally, I have went down into that volcano, and that was 3 or 4 years ago. It was about 4 years ago. During this meditation event, a bunch of light workers go around the planet activating sacred spots on the planet. And so they take groups of people and they use their consciousness to open portals and do work. And I was invited to one of those at Mount Shasta. And after about a week of meditating and doing all of these rituals, I had intense visual experience of going down into the earth. And it was one of the first times I've ever had an experience like that in my life. So when it came to like, where do we go besides LA, I was definitely a huge fan of, hey, let's go back to this place called Mount Shasta. There's a bunch of nature there, fresh air, and it's the root chakra of the planet. And there's some mystical stuff happening there as well.
That was going to be my question. Did your experience in the meditation have any influence on wanting to go up there this go around? But I guess that was part of the case. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That place it's a destination. So like a lot of spiritually minded people go there to be in that vortex of energy. However, along with that comes a lot of people that kind of veer off. I shouldn't say veer off the path. That's what I was going to say. But there's a lot of hippie, homeless, psychedelic, abusing people that drains the system of Mount Shasta. So Mount Shasta is, the people that live there are actually very prejudiced of people that look like me. Like even for us just to get a place, there's like so many questions about like, do we actually, are we actually upstanding citizens, because the city is just overrun by people that just want to sit under waterfalls, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just making a statement that it's weird, the hatred towards those type of people over there.
So are the locals not necessarily into kind of the woo-woo vibe of Mount Shasta?
No, I mean, that city exists to chop down trees. It's a logging city.
Okay.
So the vibe of it, I mean, anyone that we knew that lived there, well, I would say it's 50-50, but some of the people that we were there, one of the main reasons was because of the water. The water comes right out of the ground. It's fresh to drink. And a lot of people don't even take advantage of that. And they're just unsure about the water. And so, yeah, it's a logging town, and a lot of people are kind of blocked off and resistant to anything spiritual because they just don't like those type of people. But every other store in town is a crystal shop. So it's definitely, there's business-minded people that capitalize.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the water? Because when I went to Moab back in the fall, and there's Matrimony Springs there where, it's just a pull off the side of the road, and there's a line of Sprinter vans and different locals that are filling up jugs of water. So we went and, filled up our jugs and stuff like that. And, from where we're from back home, I think people would think that we're crazy to like drink water that's literally pouring out of a rock and doing that sort of stuff, and have no problem drinking right out of the tap. Whereas here we're like running around different, getting reverse osmosis, alkaline water, all these different things. I saw you drinking some spring water there. Can you talk about the benefits, or why people need to at least be a little bit more mindful of what kind of water they're drinking?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not 100% sure of the water thing or even the diet thing, because it's such an important concept. So I guess I'll start there. Like you said, definitely people should develop a healthy, at least hobby of considering what they put into their body, and then start asking questions of what is this water versus that water. I don't have the answer of what is best, because there's so many different rabbit holes you can go down with distilled water versus spring water versus RO water versus some water that a machine makes magical. There's so many different routes you can take, but you definitely do need to be asking the question. And in regards to the water coming out of the earth, if we really take a step back and look at what we're doing here on this life and our relationship to the planet, what we're doing here on this planet and our relationship to the planet, we're an interconnected system. And part of that system is the earth. And the earth has cycles, and there's streams of water and current flowing throughout the earth. And that water we also consume. And so as a life form on this planet, sharing air, water, sharing the light, we're sharing so much. We definitely have information transmitted back and forth through these flows, right? Through the flow of water, we're experiencing, and the body's taking in information about your place on the planet. And so there is information in water. It's definitely encoded. And so if we get it from the earth, one of the benefits, along with many others, is that you're actually connected. You're more grounded to the planet because you're taking its waters into you. When it comes to stuff that comes into the tap or stuff that's even treated by machines, there's all sorts of other information that then gets embedded into the water. So water that comes into the tap is basically coming from the city, right? And we, no matter who you are, we don't really know what the intention of the water that's being sent to our homes is, right? What we can tell from history is that those in power generally want to keep their power. And so if they're encoding with actual elements that they put into the water, or even just the intentions of how it's going to serve the people, I would assume that's probably not to our greatest benefit. And so there is probably chemicals in the water. There's probably anti-nutrients and even runoff pollutants and antidepressants that's going to screw up everything in your body. There's a lot of stuff in tap water that we really have to then battle against as a being. And coming from the earth, yes, there's things that can pollute earth water as well. And that's why we want to make sure that we find clean streams. And there's ways that people prove that. And there's resources online. But coming from the earth just seems like the place that I would trust the most over any machine, over any city that's running the water through the tap.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main reasons we had you on, because a lot of what we talked about the last time when you were on kind of came into fruition. What happened in 2020 with all the craziness and talking about reverse timelines and the Mandela effect and stuff like that the first time you were on it, and now kind of seeing it happen in front of us. My question to you is, how are you dealing with all the craziness in the world? How do you kind of unplug from the matrix and not get pulled in? Obviously, you kind of got to live in it for your business and what have you, but how do you kind of stay grounded and not get lost in the chaos that's been going around us the past year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that every single person on this planet is dealing with, right? And we have a choice to pay attention to what's going on, and we have a choice to observe it and also be aware that there's a whole lot of life also happening that is completely it's unrelated to COVID, right? Like my dog has no idea that COVID's happening, and Solar's living his best life. The tree in my backyard also existing completely harmonious within this COVID reality. And it has its own challenges as a tree. You know, we probably cut down all of its buddies over the last few hundred years, but it's still existing. It doesn't matter vaccines or not vaccines, or masks or not masks to the tree. So understanding that our life is very multidimensional. Yes, in this dimension, there's this whole COVID thing. We have to wear masks when we go into stores. We don't know if there's little micro nanobots in the masks that they're giving us or the tests that they're giving us, and what's in the vaccine versus what if we don't take the vaccine versus spike proteins polluting the entire planet. There's all this stuff happening, but we are invited to pay attention to that. And it's up to us to determine how much of that is going to take over your reality, because there's so much more to be paying attention to than this minor thing that's happening that is being blown. It's being sensationalized, right? It's being programmed to us that we need to think this is important. And there's so much more in life than this. You walk into nature, like I said, this discussion isn't happening. And so placing ourselves in positions where we don't necessarily have to have that at the forefront of our brain, it's not going to affect us so much. So are you exercising? Because in that moment, you can get into a flow where you're not thinking about the fact that you might have just lost your job because you're irrelevant in a society that has Zoom, right? Or the fact that you have to get vaccinated to go to your job. And now there's this choice. Like, are you doing things in your life where that discussion isn't happening? Exercise, yoga, meditation, even just taking a walk, focusing on the air that you're breathing. There's a lot of things in life that this is highlighting that maybe we're not paying attention to. And so that's what I would have to say about it. COVID has been the greatest thing that's ever happened to some people. You see some people crushing it, and you see other people that it's completely ruined their life. And that has to do with everyone's internal dialogue or monologue, however you want to put it, how they communicate to themselves about their environment. And this is a great show because we get to see how everyone reacts to this same exact stimuli. And really, we get to kind of see everybody's true colors. We get to see, are they a fearful person? Are they a person that thrives under pressure? Because this is a show where we're all playing the same game, and it's all the same event happening to every single person on the planet. And it's really interesting to see, not that we're racing or that there's a goal in mind, but it is really interesting to see how everyone adapts to this in different ways.
Yeah, it is. Everything in life is a choice, and where your mind goes, your energy flows. And I wish I had that had that mindset at certain points, because I feel like there's been good chunks where things have been thriving and things have been good, and then there's been times where I'm just raging and freaking out about having to wear a mask to go to Whole Foods or Natural Grocers to get my groceries. And it's like, I'm buying vegetables and vitamin D and water. Leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's really important. And I'm sure the guy over there smiling is because he's been telling me that stuff since day one. He's like, you just have to kind of focus on the 2 feet in front of your face. And you're right. There are a shit ton of people that have really thrived and pivoted and done amazing things. And then there's other people that are crumbling under the pressure, for sure.
For me, this is the start of the change that we've all been sort of waiting for. I mean, it doesn't show up the way that we want it to, but I still feel that it's perfect. A couple months before COVID happened, I was driving in El Segundo, which is by LAX, and I was looking at all these giant office buildings, and I was thinking to myself, it's 2020. Like, why do people drive from all over the city? They're driving sometimes an hour in traffic or sometimes even more to come to this building to sit in front of a computer, and probably every single person in the building is doing the exact same job. Why is this necessary? Do people even need to travel here? And can, with our technology, one person do the job of all of these people? And then COVID happened, and I was like, oh, this is the question I was just questioning. Like, no, people don't need to go to an office building anymore. We don't. And there's a lot of things that can be done by one person that used to be done by 10,000 people. Because that one person, like a teacher, for instance, and I'm not saying this is the best way, but one teacher can teach literally infinite students over this, like, online, the same way that one teacher could teach 30 students. I mean, besides the one-on-one interaction, everything else would be exactly the same. And so now we have a freeing up of human energy. That's what's happening. And we can look at it as a bunch of people losing their jobs, right? That's one way of looking at it. But also, what are they going to do with the energy, with their life force energy? We have an abundance of people that no longer have to go to the job that was unsatisfying to them and not really that useful in a world that we have this technology that we have. So even within their own life, they're mad that they're losing the job that they hate, when it's like, no, like, what do you want to be creating? We would like to depend on you to create something so that as a society, we ascend through this. We have a freeing up of human energy. What are we going to do with it? And that is the question and where I would like to shine the light on. People are losing their jobs. Great. What do we do with their energy? What's new? What's next? What's the next version of reality for us? Of course, there's the opposite side of this, right? That the whole thing was planned and that it's done to reduce population and blah, 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 right? But it's just like, what are we going to make of it? It's an event. However we got into it, you can look at it a bunch of different ways. What's the greatest expression of how you can look at it? And as an individual, that's kind of our responsibility to choose that perspective. Otherwise, you're just adding to what you don't want. You're just noticing what you don't want, and you're pointing it out to everyone. Hey, this is wrong. I don't like this, and you shouldn't like it either. And you're just taking everyone's energy into the space that you don't even want to go, but you don't realize that you're being the biggest broadcaster of it, bringing everyone else that you have impact on, influence on with you.
And in seeing the bright side of things and saying, hey, now you have free time to take your energy and create and put it elsewhere. As someone who's a coach and has worked with all different kinds of people, what do you say to the person who, maybe lost their job during this, or, maybe their relationship changed because of COVID and they're kind of down on their luck and they just don't know what they should be creating or what their purpose is? How do you kind of direct someone when you're coaching them or speaking to them to explore new things and find what that passion is or what it is they should be creating?
So a lot of this whole thing revolves around money, right? There's big distractions in people's minds around money. And there's also a distraction around health, right? People have a fear of dying, and that's a real big fear. People also have a fear of not having money. And so working on releasing these attachments allows you space to bring in other avenues to explore. And if you're so fixated on the fact that you might die, or you're so fixated on the fact that you aren't going to have money to survive, then it makes it impossible, right? If you're afraid to climb, you're never going to go up the mountain. And we basically have a bunch of mountains that we can climb, but there's these fears stopping us. So definitely looking at your languaging, and we could probably all just go back into our social media feeds and look at the last 100 posts that we made and see what we're really fearing. And that would represent itself in the things that you're saying are wrong, right? Because that's what you fear. So you're telling everyone else, hey, like, this is wrong because it makes me uncomfortable because I'm afraid of it. So that's one way that we can discover our fears, and then just start focusing on what you want. And as I was saying before, we're all depending on each other to be creating what we want. And I think that that's a question that most people don't know how to do because they weren't taught to do that. And now that there's free time, we are all, if you did lose your job or your relationship or a loved one passed away, even, there's space for you to really think about these things, and really your fears are uncovered, and to try and cover them up, put dirt back over them and try to make it so that they don't exist. It's not really going to happen now. Like, everything's changed. Your fears are there. You have to deal with it. So starting with your fears and making sure that you have a healthy relationship with what you fear, and that you're doing work to dissolve them to a degree that it's not paralyzing you to step into new avenues of being, would be where I would start. because for most people, they're paralyzed because of their fear. And then after that, you really have to start working on, why are you here? Like, what is it that gratifies you? Like, what is your gifts? What do you want to do? If money wasn't an option, what could you be doing? I'm a full-hearted believer in the fact that we could literally all be doing whatever we wanted. The problem is people don't know what they want. But yet, there's kids playing video games making millions of dollars. There's kids on TikTok doing the dumbest thing ever making millions of dollars. Why are you, a fully functioning adult, not able to do the same thing? Right? There was a time where I wanted to just work out every single day of my life when I was 19, 20, 21, 22. And I made a business out of it, where I literally just worked out every single day of my life and lived in luxury and had whatever I wanted, whatever supplement or fancy exercise equipment I wanted was just delivered to my gym because I set up a business around my passion. And then after that, I wanted to go sit under waterfalls. So I set up another business where once a week I go and I meditate and I videotape it and I have a subscription. And I don't really pay attention to that business because I have another business where I help people through multi-level marketing. And I'm basically just helping people deal with all their blocks around money and their mental blocks about what they're capable of, that I find way more gratifying than being outside. So I put a lot of energy there. But whatever we want to do, we can build a business around. That's how it used to be, right? If you liked working with shoes, then you were the guy in your town that built the boots that everybody wore. And you got to build the boots that you wanted, that satisfied you and the needs that you had, and everybody else would pay you money because you were valuable to them. So understanding where our value is, and then also, so that's 2, is understanding what we want to do, build a business around it. And then 3 is really understanding your value. A lot of people don't really know how money works. We're taught that we're taught in school, show up to class, listen to the teacher, we'll give you the grade of what you're worth based on how good you can follow directions. Then we go into the workplace. The people that ascend through the management ranks and go up, they're the people that follow the rules and pay attention and show up on time. And so it's rewarded through schooling and how the corporate system's set up to follow the rules, pay attention, show up on time. But that's not really what's valuable to society. And so a lot of us feel unvaluable because we don't show up on time, we don't follow the rules, and we don't listen. And so we feel like I'm kind of worthless because I don't really fit into this societal structure. And we have this trauma that we're not worth a lot. And then so if we develop something, like we go, I want to be a ring designer, and we design a ring. When we go into the marketplace, we undervalue ourselves, or if we're a coach, we undervalue ourselves, or if we're anything, if we're producing a product, we undervalue ourselves and we don't charge really what we're worth. And that comes across in your messaging, that comes across in your confidence. And because of that, people don't value you because you don't value yourself. So really understanding what you have to offer, how it can impact another person, and place your value on that as opposed to how many hours it takes you to do it. This hour thing is like, that's just imprinted in us in this slave-like society where we teach people to trade time for money. But that's really not what value translates as. Value translates as, if I use your product or service, how much value does it bring me? How much value does it bring your customer? That's where you want to be centering your value assessment on. How much value are you bringing other people? Not, I spent 2 hours doing this and I've been told my entire life that I'm worth $20 an hour. So this whole thing should really cost $40. So I'm going to go to the marketplace with this $40 thing. That $40 thing could save somebody, let's say it's an information product, could save somebody 2 years of their experience, 2 years of their life. It's not worth $40. You think it's worth $40, but to them, it's worth way, way more. But because you're saying it's worth $40, they must think this is some shit. This is not valuable. I'm not going to listen to this person. So we have all this dynamic happening. And I said a lot there, but start just reworking, fear, reworking what we actually do, how we serve, and then understanding our valuable within the framework of the marketplace is where I would start.
Yeah, there's a lot of unraveling and a lot of rewiring and like moving circuit boards around and stuff for people's programming to get into that mindset and that headspace of, I think a lot of coaches too, they undervalue themselves, or they're afraid to tell someone, yeah, this is going to cost you $600 a month, because they think that no one's going to want to pay it. But a lot of times what happens is when you set that bar really high, all of a sudden you have an influx of people that can actually afford that, 600, 800, whatever it may be, price tag. And then you're like, oh, all I had to do was kind of believe in myself and believe in my value. And then it's kind of it's law of attraction type stuff in a way.
The issue is the coach that's charging the $600 probably can't afford $600 himself on a coach. So right. He or she or they feel that they're too expensive. And that's just reflected into the intention of their entire business. And they don't even get that $600 because that's what they think of their product. But yeah, people are existing at different financial levels, like from poverty to very, very wealthy. And sometimes we're unable to look outside our own level and to realize that there's millions of people right now that are happy spending $6,000 a month in coaching, as well as millions of people that 600 is too much, and just knowing that there's enough and that you have to do the work. Like, how are you going to make it $6,000 of worth or $600 of worth? What problem are you solving? And is that problem worth $600 to them or $6,000? And then can you communicate that to them? A lot of people fixate on why they're good. I'm so good because when you give me $600, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do this thing that I learned very specially from this. And I'm. That doesn't speak to people. What problem are you solving for them? And I had an issue with this because I don't like to focus on negatives. But then when I realized that talking about problems that people are having is way more impactful because they listen, because you're now talking about them as opposed to me and how great I am because I know this information and because I have this thing, talking about their problems and how to, get them, how to navigate out of their problems. It actually opens them up to eventually being interested in your products and services. So, focusing on the problems that people have and how to solve them and what type of people have those problems is where I would start in business.
So, James, did you have a question? So, since I was going to ask about it, your creative side, obviously I'd love to hear an update on the Korea of the Week and all that, because I've seen some of those epic videos from when you were up in Mount Shasta, but then also since you mentioned it, a lot of times when people hear multi-level marketing, they have a very certain opinion of it. So if you wanted to go into that, touch on that and those products, and then potentially maybe how people can get involved, or if you want people involved.
Yeah, and I definitely chose multi-level marketing for that reason. A lot of people in the business choose to say network marketing, or they choose to describe it as something completely different because of the negative connotation MLM has. But I'm completely in love with this industry, and I have no issue with talking about it. And also excited when people have objections about it. Not that I go trying to convince everyone, but it's good. It's good to have a healthy conversation about something that you could stand to learn more about. But back to Kriya of the Week. Kriya of the Week is awesome. It's still in its MVP stage, which is minimum viable product. 2, maybe 3 years ago, I think it's going on 3 years. I made a product called Kriya of the Week, charge $11.11 a month for it, and basically is a short meditative practice. And Kriya means to do. And so, like, for instance, this week's Kriya, we focus a lot on our eyes and changing the visual perspective from looking very short, like at my thumb, and then into the horizon while doing movements, and then bringing in the energy of looking out into the horizon, like inhaling that energy and then exhaling it into your thumb, into yourself. And we're changing this visual landscape of our eyes and the focus. And that's half the Kriya. We do a bunch of different exercises where we're changing our perspective, right? Because if we can work with our physical body, our eyes, and our ability to focus in different lengths and dimensions very quickly and absorb them into our body, then that's going to translate into your ability to take on different perspectives of opinions, different perspectives of what COVID means to you, different perspectives of all the information that we take in. And so we use physical practices of breath, of movement, even with eye stuff, to really translate into our energetic body, our emotions, and our mindset. And we use practices from Kriyas that I gather, and I even start merging them together. And it's awesome. And it's in the MVP stage because I never really launched it. So I launched it, but never really scaled it. So there's a few hundred members doing that. It doesn't have my full attention. I'd really, really like to put a little bit more attention, or at least gather a team of people that can help me with marketing and can help me with some editing and social media around it. So that kind of is just on the side burner. The reason why it's there is because at the same time I was doing that business, I started up with my MLM company, and we work with superfoods. And in the beginning, I was very hesitant because I had that same skepticism that we were talking about earlier. It actually took me 5 years to say yes to this opportunity. And once I did, it completely changed my whole perspective and completely changed and evolved my life. Pretty much what I do is, and the way that I tell my story about what I do, which is also important in business, and even if you have a job, understanding your relationship to your job, you can write that story. You could just be a bricklayer that's doing manual labor, or you could be the person that's building there's a famous story about people building churches, but one bricklayer thinks he's just building, laying bricks, and another bricklayer thinks that he's the one responsible for people's spiritual evolution, because without him, they wouldn't have a church to go to. So having our own story. So the story I tell myself about network marketing is that I'm facilitating the support to create creators, because I'm really teaching people about themselves. Multi-level marketing is completely all about self-development. Yes, we're using superfoods that change people's lives. They're scientifically proven to do things no other foods can do. They're guaranteed money back. The products are awesome, but in terms of a business, we're not product salesmen. Within MLM, we're responsible for the distribution of the products. So the products really aren't our business. We are the business. Our ability to take the products to market and have people buy them because they trust us, that's our product. We're the product. And are we able to build a team of people that can do the same thing? Are we able to create other people that can ascend through their own limiting beliefs? Like, that's really the product that we work on, is ourself. And so what I do is I facilitate the growth of beings. I facilitate the growth of people to work within their fears and push their fears out and teach them a little bit of business skills, but it's really all about self, how we relate to ourselves. And the interesting thing about multi-level marketing is that in every company, everyone thinks their company's awesome, and I do as well. But in every company, they have ranks, and so the whole thing's kind of gamified, and you get paid based on your rank. So the higher your rank, the more you get paid, and the more you get paid is based on how many people you're impacting with your products and services, or with their ability to create business through your support. And so, for instance, in my organization, we sold like somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 worth of products last month. All of those products wouldn't have been sold without me. If I wouldn't have said yes after 5 years, none of the people that are in many of the levels in my organization wouldn't exist, because I enrolled somebody who enrolled somebody who enrolled somebody who enrolled somebody. And every single one of these levels, people are selling products. So your ability to bring success in business to other people determines how much products get sold within your organization, and that determines how much money you get paid. And the whole gamified thing, I forget where I was going with that. It allows us, now I know. So every rank you go up, you get paid more money. And it's interesting from my perspective to see people that go from being a personal trainer who was struggling, making a few $1,000s a month, to making over $10,000 a month. And a construction worker who was also struggling gets involved in this and now is meeting his construction salary. And people hit boundaries of what they feel is possible in their life in terms of money. And even myself. And it's interesting because I said, like, the money thing is an evolving concept that I hope everyone realize is an evolving concept. You might still be in the paradigm that you work and get paid for money, and that's how money works. Or you might be in the paradigm that if I buy a building and somebody else works and then pays me money because I own the property, like, there's a bunch of different paradigms with money. So just realize that we all have an ability to evolve our concept of what money is. But when you start making $2,000 a month versus 5,000 versus 8,000 versus 20,000, people have stops and they will sabotage because they don't know how to exist in the next tier of money coming into their life. And that's where you make the real big money, is when you're able to walk people through that stop, that limit that they have, because they don't know what it's like to make more money, and they don't know how to exist at this more ascended version of reality where maybe they're not living with their parents anymore. That's very scary for somebody. Or maybe where they now pay all their bills on time, or they buy a new car, or they're taking bigger risks. They don't know how to do this, and they start to have breakdowns, and they'd rather just stay at their income level. It's really crazy that I get this perspective where people are making more and more money and they want to go back. They want to retreat because they're scared of this new version of themselves, and they don't want to break up with who they've been for their entire life. It's harder to break up with that person, yourself, than it is with like a lover that you've known for 2 years, right? We know how hard that is. Imagine breaking up with yourself and becoming somebody new. And money does that. So yeah, so that's sorry, I know you, I'm just going to finish up so we don't have to keep on talking about that. So that's what I do. Definitely. So my partner and I were like some of the superstars in our company. Like, we're on the advisory boards, like we have the systems that work. And so I get to help people go through this process. And if anyone's interested in that, just reach out to me on Instagram at raw_of_earth. And we can, see if this is a good fit for you, or if you're a good fit for this.
Cool. I may be hitting you up. Real quick, with the 1111 for the monthly subscription, is there any numerology behind that encoded?
Yeah. There's, that whole thing, but not as as deep, like it gets kind of weird when you get into mysticism, because it starts getting into black magic and what it means. And so if I choose a logo that has some geometry, it's probably associated with like some Freemason type occult stuff. And so I don't really understand it completely. I'm evolving my understanding with all of this numerology and geometry and how things work on this reality. But I am aware that there's manipulative aspects of some of this that I want to at least be cognizant of, because I've definitely done a lot of experiments. I've studied so much about the magic and the occult secrets, and it's crazy how much of it works. It all works. And trying to integrate it into my life, how I want to live it, is the work. Because we could just take what works into our life and just say like, okay, if you're a single guy, like, I'm going to just gather up all the babes and seduce them because I know these techniques. And I'm just using that as one aspect, right? It's not just dating. It's money. It's manipulate. We can start manipulating this entire reality. And it's an interesting topic to me, because I don't know if there's such thing as right and wrong, but then even that statement alone gets into the argument of the elites, that what they do, that's what they believe, is that there is no right and wrong. So they can basically manipulate the entire planet and do whatever they want, because wrong is right and right is wrong. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Have you studied up on Aleister Crowley a bit?
Just I think I have one of his books in my Amazon wish list, but that's the stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sex magic and I really, all of that information has been held by people like Aleister Crowley and all the other Freemasons. And I am unsure with how I feel about it, because to me, it does make sense that every single person in power that we know about is utilizing some of these art forms, mystic art forms, black magic. And a lot of the black magic is what we would normally deem as wrong, right? Like raping children or drinking the blood of tortured humans. Like, most of us would generally deem that as wrong. But when you actually start looking into it, you're like, well, they're getting this information from some sort of interdimensional being, whether it's Lucifer or some sort of reptilian or whatever the story is. And how is that any different than us, thinking it's okay to eat an animal, or thinking it's okay to just eat a plant? And so it would make sense that if we eat plants and animals at the level that we're at, and the plants and animals eat the entities lower than them, and we're all consuming air, earth, light, and water, which is also, a living system. If we're all consuming living systems, it makes sense that there would be some entity above us that would think that it's completely morally, if there's even morals involved, morally fine to be consuming human beings. And so for one that wants to experience that higher dimension of power, maybe that's the route to it. And so do you see what I mean by like how it gets a little bit like, this is a slippery slope of even what I am comfortable talking about. It just gets a little slippery of like, is this right or is this wrong, or is there even a thing as right and wrong, and what are we doing on this planet? Why did these things exist?
Is there ways from your experience to kind of, I don't know if it's called white magic or good magic, or kind of not to manipulate people, but to rise your vibration so high that you attract all that you want, and it's not kind of manipulating other people's realities, or doing things in bad? Or is it all kind of, once you kind of decide to go down that road, you're kind of playing with like good versus evil type shit?
Yeah, that's thanks for reminding me of it. It goes back to what I was talking about with the tree in my backyard. It's using its own sort of magic to grow up straight to the sky. That has nothing to do with manipulating other parts of reality. And so the black magic stuff where you're manipulating the masses of people to do certain thing, that's one way. That's one way of existing and focusing on your life. But then there's, like you said, there's other, I don't know if I could call them dimensions, but there's other realms that we could put our focus to that has nothing to do with anything quote evil. It's just about like love and light. And I find that a lot of my messaging, about knowing what you want, because we're all depending on you to create your dream world so that we all can live in each other's dream world. That sort of language comes from that focus, that dimension, where if these people are able to do these things, right? If black magic is a thing and it's real, then what they're doing is they're utilizing the power of all of the individuals on the planet for their will. And which means that all the individuals on the planet have power. And so if we can activate our power and stay in harmony, which is my definition of like love. And it's like when you're in harmony, when you feel satisfied, what do you feel satisfied with? Those emotions, if we can stay in those quote positive emotions, I feel that we are very powerful in terms of manipulating reality and harmonizing reality to more harmonized realities. Like if we stay in this high vibration, we will magnetize and create everything around us to be sort of vibrating in this way. And the way that I coach people to do this is to focus on that word satisfaction. A lot of people message me online and they say they don't have money, right? And so I tell them, well, list 10 reasons why you're wealthy, right? Like let's pretend money doesn't exist. Within your life, what are 10 reasons why you're wealthy? And so that gives you a practice to write down 10 reasons why you're wealthy and then start to notice them. If one of those things is because you've got a lot of free time on your hands, take a walk through nature, you have a lot of free time on your hand to draw, and that you love art, then you start to notice how satisfied and wealthy feeling you feel when you're doing these 10 things. And you practice the skill of being satisfied. And as you can do that with these 10 things, that list of 10 starts to expand because you're practiced in the art of feeling satisfied. You can then start feeling satisfied in things that are less desirable than your top 10, right? Maybe your next 10 isn't as desirable, but you start to learn to be satisfied with them until your list is every single moment of your life. And in every single moment of your life, you've learned to be satisfied. Now, what type of person is that? Right? Like that's like the Messiah type people that we know throughout history, that every situation is glorious to them. And that type of person, number one, the whole paradigm is you don't need anything to change in your life to be in heaven. But what would most likely happen is you're walking around in a state of having heavenly being, you will attract others in that state, and others in that state will be more powerful. And the harmony, so I'm getting into a different topic here, but the harmony that we create in ourselves makes us powerful to shift reality. So the Heart Math Institute does a lot of experiments on this, and basically our own internal mechanism, our heart is projecting our electromagnetic aura out into our electromagnetic reality, which really isn't solid. Like, we think everything's solid, but it's all vibrating energy. And so the more of us that are in tune with who we are, the more shape shifting into reality we can do. And the only way that we get in tuned is noticing how satisfied we are, but then we also have to be doing actions that match that, right? We have to be speaking in a way that matches that, and we have to be thinking in a way that matches it. So just being satisfied doesn't really make you valuable to society. It makes you probably not make any money, but not making any money makes you unharmonious with yourself. So you would have to learn how to change some of these situations in your life, the way you speak, the actions you take, to match your level of satisfaction. And what would happen is you would have to be producing actions that add value. As much satisfaction that you're experiencing, you want others to experience that satisfaction, which would then bring value to them, which would then be reciprocated to you in the form of money, which would then allow you to be more satisfied and be able to add more value to people. And then that's when we got this like positive reinforcement effect of people that are on this planet to help facilitate other people experiencing positive emotions. And everyone's then talking better, acting better, feeling better. And that's how, again, we can shift the planet with an activity where we're just focusing on our own self-satisfaction.
Do they all kind of go hand in hand, or should you start with, the thoughts or thought with the words, or should you just kind of be doing those sorts of things together? Like, all right, I'm putting intention into my words, I'm putting intention into my thoughts, and I'm being mindful of whether or not I'm being positive or negative in my thoughts and my language.
Yeah, so it does all work hand in hand. Let's just take somebody who maybe feel at like everything I said is bullshit because they're a like employee at a job, and they just think no matter how they are, they're still going to get paid $7 an hour, or whatever people are getting paid nowadays, $17 an hour. The thing is that if you are going to work and you are definitely in awareness that you're unsatisfied with your job, then that puts you at you're unharmonious with yourself, right? And so let's just say you take this exercise to heart and you're like, I'm just going to experiment with it. So now the next time you're driving to work, you're recognizing the beauty of your job, right? Maybe you're not just serving coffee, but that smile that you're giving everybody, right? Knowing that coffee is like a drug too, right? You're giving everybody their fix. Like, you're the person, you're the portal into everybody's happiness that's receiving this plant medicine from you. If you can rework how you feel about what you were before unsatisfied with and learn to find satisfaction in it, then not only are you more valuable to every single person walking in to, greet, you and your $7 an hour job, you're bringing more value than the money thing. Bringing more value to the people, and you're bringing more value to your boss. He sees you now as the smiling employee that he trusts, probably give more responsibility to. You will, like, the only way to go if you are in harmony with yourself is up. It's the only way. The odds of you meeting somebody and having an interaction that's authentic out of the 1,000 people that walk into your doors every week, the odds of you meeting somebody who also recognizes you're in harmony and they want you to come work for them, and maybe they sell jet airplanes where a commission is now $50,000 or $500,000 as opposed to $7 for you serving coffee. The odds of that happening only happen to people that are only increase to people that are in harmony with themselves. And so no matter what, we have to learn harmony within ourselves and then expand that into harmony within your environment. And then your environment will want to be doing business with you. They will want to be interacting with you. They will be attracted to you. So we have to release our attachments to how we want things different. If we're just focused on I want everything to be different, you're not harmonious with it. You're repelling everything, and everything will be repelled by you. So we want to start merging into our existence, start noticing, becoming aware, first in ourselves, but then into everything in our environment. And then everything in our environment starts to merge into you. And then when that happens, your intentions, your thoughts around what you want to do become more easier because you're connected to everything. You are one with reality, with existence. And this is like some master level stuff when you get to that level where you just think feather and you look down as you're thinking feather and there's a feather on the street. But this is the state of my existence. Like thoughts manifest basically when I'm having them. And anyone can do this. And if what I'm saying is a little bit out of grasp for your mentality, then that's good. You can start walking in this direction and probably being able to speak about it greater than I am in a few years because you persistently wanted to learn more about this way of being. Because I didn't start off knowing this stuff. I definitely went to school for psychology because I'm interested in the human being and the human condition, and that was 20 years ago. And so I do know a whole lot about this. I do read a ton and learn a ton about the human experience. And so what I can tell you, just to amplify my message, is that I've done countless experiments on this, including seeing if I could win CrossFit competitions without working out. Is it possible to win a CrossFit competition if I don't work out for a year? Yes, it is. Out of just pure, like everything that I'm talking about. Is it possible to live in luxury without a job? Yes, it is. Is it possible to live in the most expensive houses in Los Angeles if I don't have money? Yes, it is. And reality works in weird ways that I don't really have a full grasp on, but you can trust that reality is deeper than we all know. And we might as well start digging down and discovering more about it, because then we discover more about ourselves.
So speaking of reality being deeper than we know, the last time you were on here, you made fun of my co-host over there because he was talking about the Anunnaki. We came prepared today. What are your thoughts on mud floods in Tataria?
Wait, I was making fun of him about the Anunnaki?
No.
I just said, have you?
You're like 10 years ago, bro.
You're like, yeah, 10 years ago.
All right. Well, I guess you guys have me stumped on those two concepts that you just talked about. What did you say? Mud floods and
Tataria?
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh man. Well, just a real Tataria was a worldwide, I guess, civilization, like a unified civilization that was kind of what they think was in the maps and stuff was like Russia area.
Okay.
And there's actually still like a province in Russia that's called Tartar, I believe. But it just kind of dives into this whole like history is everything that we've been taught in history is complete bullshit. And there was like this other like Atlantean civilization, where they built a lot of those neo-Gothic and the Roman style architecture, because that stuff that we're told that was built in 1700s, whatever it was, there's things like that were here in the United States, and apparently they just kind of popped up over the course of like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, from like the 1850s to the early 1900s. And then they had the World's Fairs, where then it gets into this whole thing about orphan trains and repopulation and that these cities or these places where they had the World's Fairs were already there, and then they tore them down to kind of remove history. Same thing with some of the aspects of like World War One and World War Two, that these wars were fought to kind of like destroy these ancient relics in these cities and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah, I mean, history is, whoever controls history controls like what the population feels is possible. And so I haven't gotten into that, but I definitely know that history, the way that it's taught, is very narrow. It's a very narrow perspective. And even just the Native Americans in this country and what they were doing. And I urge and invite everybody to start looking into stuff like you're talking about, because there's so many things that the pyramids existed there and we don't know how they're built, but this is our best guess, and so that's how it is. It's not good enough for us to accept. And there's sites that are over 100,000 years old that were obviously built by some human type being. So even just our concept of how Homo sapien evolved is off the mark. So most of the stuff that we learned in school is it has to be off the mark. When we just do a simple Google search for some things, we start to notice. And we don't get taught it in the media and in school, so we have to do our own research. But oh man, there was something interesting I was going to say, but I forget. Yeah, so we when looking at this stuff though, so back to what I was kind of getting, my whole theme of this whole thing is, when we look at this stuff, just arguing with other people about whether it's one way or another doesn't really serve us. When we look into history washing, or are there aliens, or was there Atlantis and Lemuria, and when we start looking into this, and what does it mean to you is really the only important question. That's the most important question. If this were true, how does that impact my relationship to my life and my environment that I exist in? Does it? Because for me, it's changed a lot. The more information I learn about basically history being completely off. For instance, there's a book, I was going to look for it, but it's an Audible. It's called Humankind. I studied psychology in school, so basically like 2000 to 2006, I was in college studying psychology, so like 20 years ago. And we learned about some very famous studies that the entire psychological framework of everything, like we base a lot of our assumptions of the human being on these studies, like the prison experiment, and we even have things that aren't studies, like the book Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Flies, that we just assume if kids get trapped on an island that they're going to, go into chaos. So there's a lot of things that we learn in psychology that are basically all just like scientists or psychologists trying to make themselves famous. And a lot of studies that we take as truth were really some scientists or some psychologists or sociologists trying to make themselves famous. So they rig the study to make some shocking result that isn't really true. And so basically all the studies that I thought were real from psychology school are like not at all true at all. And that's just an example of how kind of the scientific method fails us, because we think that an experiment is the end all be all of truth, but we don't realize that humans are running the experiment. And what's the reward for them if they have a shocking experiment? They get basically an entire career of where they become famous for this discovery, and then they coast for, like, they get to write books and get paid to be on talk shows. And so there's a lot riding on them that allows them to make the decision to make something up. that's not true. And that's how science works here. And everyone says, well, what about the peer reviewed stuff? Well, all of the peers of these scientists are also wanting the studies that support their stance to be the ones that get passed through. So anything that negates the peer reviewed, like the peer reviewed means that there's people reviewing the studies, anything that negates their stance, they will reject. And so it's really this like broken system. And so then people say, I trust science and I don't trust your Google search. Well, science isn't something that you necessarily need to think of as like this unfallible system. It's very fallible because humans are running the show.
Scientism. Isn't that what Aleister Crowley says? Belief is the enemy of knowledge.
That's cool. His definition of magic, I think I like too. It's like he basically just says if you can control something to your, like if you can make reality bend to your will, then that's magic.
Have you ever heard that George Bush is related to him?
No, but it makes sense. I mean, they're all, so back to that topic, it makes sense that every single person in power that is famous is part of some secret society. It just makes sense. And I don't know if I necessarily think it's wrong of them, right? Of course, they're going to do that to keep their power. They're going to, the pop stars, the movie stars, they're all going to, they're just going to hire people and advance people through the media. If the media is all part of the same secret society, they're just going to highlight the other people that are part of that same secret society. It just makes sense. And they're going to want countries controlled by people that are in that secret society. So they're going to manipulate what the masses think until the entire world, anybody that is in any position of power is part of the same secret society. It makes sense that they would do that. Why wouldn't they? Right? However, so there's the good example of this is like if you're a rabbit, and I don't know if lions hunt rabbits, but let's just say, and there's a lion that hunts rabbits. The lion doesn't tell the rat, like any particular rabbit, how to not get eaten by itself, right? The lion's going to go eat whatever rabbit makes the mistake of being in front of it. However, there are going to be some rabbits that figure it out. They're going to figure out that if I only go outside of the hole at this time, that there's no lions, and that's when it goes out and it learns how to exist in the environment. And the lion doesn't have any problem with that. The lion doesn't have any problems with the rabbits that learn to ascend above itself and exist in a happy way, frolicking however it wants. It doesn't have a problem because there's enough rabbits that don't care enough to figure it out for him to eat. And that's how I kind of view the elites, is they're not going to tell us how to evade their tactics. They're not going to tell us how to even utilize their tactics in a way that makes us more powerful. They're not going to tell us that. But they're also like, there's enough people that they're siphoning energy off of where, to a degree, now this is where the to a degree part comes, because if you then, well, let me finish my thought. We all have the ability to live our most glorious life, even if these elite people are controlling the planet. We do. Just like that one rabbit has the ability to live its most glorious life when there's a lion eating all of its relatives. However, if you're a rabbit that grows up and it decides to teach all the other rabbits how to do its tricks, and then the lion doesn't have any rabbits to eat, that's when the lion now has a problem with you, the rabbit that's teaching everybody else. And so that's where people like Martin Luther King get murdered, right? And the scientists that are discovering all this stuff, they're just getting murdered. And that's where I get confused a little bit on this whole thing. Because I can think positively about how I can just exist in harmony and in light and love, but not everybody can, right? And if any one of us steps up and influences enough people to sort of take their own sovereign control, then that person gets murdered, and it gets a little gray for me there. I don't know what to think about that. So I go around in circles in my own head about all these things I talk about.
We all do, different levels, of course. But yeah, I think that was a really good thing for me, was to realize that I wasn't the only person that had these conversations with myself and going around and around. About 20 years ago or something, and I had a conversation with a friend. I'm like, "Oh, you do that shit too? All right, I'm normal."
Yeah, I mean, one great teaching that I received was that, you know, Hitler, someone like Hitler, right? Somebody that we would think of as bad or wrong. That sort of character, that sort of villain, needs to exist in our life for us to even know what the difference between right and wrong is. And we think about polarities as being like a bar with like the opposite side is far away from one side is far away from the other, but they're necessary, right? Like there is if you have light and darkness, the darkness wouldn't exist without the light, and the light wouldn't exist without the darkness, because you wouldn't have a concept of light unless there is some parts within the light that were dark. And so the question is, like, are these situations existing in our life? So this comes to another realm, another window or lens of looking at life. Like, if this whole thing was a video game or a matrix, or even if it's not, if it's just our life, are all these things happening because it's necessary for us to understand how we want to exist in this reality? Because without all of these things happening, then reality would be kind of boring. It would, it'd be like if there was no darkness, we wouldn't even know the light exists. It would just be this thing. And that's another concept of what the universe is, right? Is that there is like this God figure or light that then separated itself into all different aspects of being. And that's what we are right now. We're just an aspect of light that is experiencing itself. And we have to be in different types of scenarios to learn and experience all the different emotions of life. And so without this environment, life would be meaningless. It would be kind of just like pointless. And so the more aware we become, it's kind of like the scientist that develops the stronger microscope. The stronger, the more down it goes, the more deep it goes, the more it discovers. Or a telescope, the further our telescopes get, the more that we see. So the more awakened we get, the more that we see about reality. I don't know if it ever ends. It's just we're perceiving more and more and more. So there's more of us to perceive, which means that there's more of us to intake, to then question our own existence of what we're doing here. And if we started seeing that, like, if there is just an end, right? If we just discovered all the truth, then we would kind of stop evolving. So the people that are focused on constantly evolving are the ones that are discovering more and more horrific and blissful things about reality. And without the horrific things, we really wouldn't have a context of what is blissful. And so as opposed to polarity being a bar with two opposite sides, we must realize that it's not a bar. It's if we bend that bar into a circle, then like the light and the dark are actually the same thing, right? And the opposite poles are an illusion. And really circles don't really exist in nature as much as vortexes do, right? So it's like this spiraling tornado that goes up. And so as we go through life and we're experiencing light and dark, right and wrong, positive, negative, masculine, feminine, of all the experiences, we're experiencing the different sides of the same thing, but we're spinning in an ascended fashion, understanding these experiences different each time as a result of the last time we were in a similar experience, until we get to I'm like spiraling my hands up, right? Until we get to a point where we're not spiraling anymore. If you think about an upside down tornado, you start at the bottom and you're experiencing all these different things and different polarities. By the time you get to the top, there's very little movement in the polarities, and you come to a point. And in that point, you are all, right? You're both sides of the polarity at once. And I think that that's kind of the point that I'm looking at my ring right now, and it's a pyramid. And so it's that same concept. And at the top of the pyramid is what? The all-seeing eye, right? So in the unity of the vortexing experiences, you become all. And for most of us, that happens when we die. Like that's when we get the answers. And some of us see versions of that throughout life.
Powerful. Well, I'm fired up. This has been an awesome conversation. We really appreciate your insight and your time. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to connect with you and get some of that energy flowing through the airwaves and onto the computer screen. Because yeah, I mean, a lot of things that you've touched on today have ring true to home, and are definitely, it's a good reminder of certain things that I need to be working on in order to live as the strongest version of the 100-mile dick, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we can really do, right?
Yeah.
Just know what we can control, and we can control ourselves and our experience. That's the greatest thing about it. You hear stories of like Nelson Mandela, right? They're in jail, but in his mind, he's not in jail, right? They can't imprison your mind. So no matter what your experience, there's somebody that's happy in your exact experience, and that somebody can be you. And within that happiness, you don't really need anything to be different. It doesn't matter if it's COVID or the Illuminati taking over, the whole world. Like, you can still be happy within all of this. And that's kind of like the saving grace with this all, is that we can be one of the warriors that are fighting for change, and I should say, and at the end of every day, when our head hits the pillow, we can rest assured that we are satisfied with this game and happy to be here, right? Like, if you were a pro BMX bike downhill racer, you would be very unsatisfied on flat grounds, right? You'd want to be coming down that mountain full speed with the risk of injury and death, but the reward of glory at the end. And so we can just look at this life as that mountain as opposed to a flat road. And it's glorious to be, in this chaotic place called Earth at this moment in time. And we're completely capable of being here.
Excellent. You got time for like 4 more rapid fire, like real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right on. Are you a coffee drinker at all? Do you partake in the plant medicine of coffee?
I have never. I think I've had under 10 cups in my life. I used to say 5, but I think I've done some in the last few years, but I don't I do know that when I drank coffee before, it made me happy. So I get it, but I don't really drink it. I'm kind of low caffeine as it is.
Is it a caffeine thing or a flavor thing or both?
It's knowing that when I was younger, everyone that drank coffee told me that I'm going to one day drink coffee and I'm not going to be able to stop. And so I was like, well, then I'm just not going to start. And so I don't really have the attachment to it that a lot of people do. I have no concept of being addicted to it or needing it, like none in my life. It just doesn't even exist for me. So I don't know the pleasures of coffee and what it brings to people.
Cool.
It may be good for you. It may be bad for you, with the adrenal glands, but I don't know.
Do you drink tea in the morning, or do you have some sort of ritualistic beverage that you partake in every day?
I love herbs and tea, and so we make all sorts of concoctions around that. Um, and our products that we sell are that type of stuff too, herbs and adaptogens. But yeah, so no ritual. I really like mushrooms as well, and really what they are. They're not really plants. They're more related to animals than they are plants. And so our systems can really uptake what they are and utilize the essence.
What kind of
You have a
mushrooms
favorite
you
fungi?
chowing down on?
So Seema, my fiance, she's the one that does most of the cooking and basically makes most of the herbs formulas. So I kind of I'm losing my connection, but I do know that the regular stuff, cordyceps, um, it's like I don't even think about it any day because she handles it all. Chaga, reishi, like the popular stuff that you see is the stuff that has the most effect. It's just a lot of company sell reishi, so you want to try and find the highest level of these compounds, whether it's any food, but definitely when you're talking about herbs that are medicinal, you want to find the companies that care because there is differences.
What's your daily ritual or daily practice looking like these days?
So I've been doing yoga, and it's been something I haven't really been doing in my entire life. I used to find a meditative state while exercising, like very intensely, but I haven't been doing that. Like I haven't lifted a weight or anything. I've just been doing yoga every single day. And it's unwinding my body. And then when I combine qigong with yoga, it's really powerful. And when I got rid of the exercise, what it did was it stopped that distraction of, I don't know, it just felt like exercise, like lifting weights, contracting the muscles was distracting to what yoga does, which is expanding the muscles and then expanding the body and the mind and the emotional state. And so that's the new thing for me is no exercise and just yoga. And I definitely don't think that's the answer for everyone. And it's probably not going to be the answer for me. But in terms of daily ritual, that's what I'm doing, all different types of yoga. And it's crazy because I've done yoga my entire life. I'm even a yoga teacher, but I've never done it without also exercising, like doing some sort of weightlifting or cardio, work. And so now I'm just yoga, and it's different.
How's the sun gazing coming along?
So in Mount Shasta, it was pretty much impossible because we were surrounded by mountains, but we just moved to Laguna Beach and we can see the sunset like from our house, and the sunrise happens a couple blocks away. So, man, this is one of those vortex things because I was sun gazing every single day 4 years ago. Like I was really taking it serious, like 30 to 40 minutes every single day for years. And I kind of get to revisit it now, and knowing a little bit more about some of these subtle aspects of life, I can start to feel, before I would sun gaze and just kind of let it into me, but now I'm pulling the light into my body. And so I'm having a new experience with it all.
Feeling energized?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you listening to right now in terms of what do you get down with musically? Are you listening to anything while you're doing yoga? You checking out any podcasts? You mentioned you had an Audible book. You got anything else you're reading or diving into when you're not working?
So this book, it's called, it wasn't on Audible last time I checked, Plant Intelligence and the Imaginal Realm into the Dreaming of Earth. You can see I'm only like maybe a third of the way through it. It's probably it is the best book I've read. Well, it's top 3 best book I've ever read in any subject, but definitely the best book in terms of in a literal sense, like beyond science, like what life is, what our emotions are, what our experiences is on this planet, and the interactions of life, including the whole planet as a whole. So maybe it's the best book because that's basically every subject. It just really well explains what we're doing here with the plants and the earth and what this all is, in a way that doesn't mention the Illuminati. It doesn't mention aliens. It's just talking about simple mechanics of plants and animals and our relationship to each other.
Is that something that's a fairly recent work, or has that been around for a while?
I want to say it's 2016.
Okay.
This guy also wrote The Lost Language of Plants and the Secret Teachings of Plants, which are also like the Secret Teachings of Plants, I think, is on Audible, and it is crazy. It's crazy. So I think this is one of his newer books. But yeah, I like to understand things from another perspective, and understanding them from really what the earth is and what the plants are on the earth allows us to understand ourselves a little bit better. And he talks a lot about gating systems, like our body's ability to absorb information is gated, meaning there's like millions of bits of information coming into our senses, but we only really focus on like 120 bits. That's not from the book, but it's essentially what he's saying. And that's 120 bits is basically enough for us to have 2 conversations, because a conversation is about 60 bits of processing power. And so we gate what we let through into our consciousness, but in our subconscious, there's all this other information. And a lot of what this book is about is how do we access that other information and what is it for? Because and just like, what is it? Because we really just kind of walk around reality as just like a meat stick that needs to eat, needs to have sex, needs to like protect itself and find shelter. And that's just what we're focused on. But there's all of these other different aspects of life that are coming into our body that we're just not experiencing. So if we can open ourselves up to that experience, we can even start connecting to the planet in a different way, because we start seeing things that are outside the realm of feed ourselves, go to work, get shelter, find sex.
Is it super heavy or is it fairly easy to digest?
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But you guys can start with The Secret Teaching of Plants. I have a psychology background, so maybe it's like coming into me it's like lighting up all this stuff I know about human beings. And like that whole thing with the bits thing, like that's just prior knowledge I have. He doesn't really go into that. So it's pretty heavy, and it's really thick. It's even taken me, I got it like a year ago. It has over 500 pages. But like I said, Secret Teachings of Plants is on Audible, and that's really easy and just as awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't really listen to music. I just listen to solfeggio frequencies if I have music on.
Is that kind of like binaural beats type stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Right on. Hit him with the last one, Jim.
I don't need to emphasize this one for you because I know you're already on the level. What's your favorite conspiracy theory, if you have one?
Favorite?
Well, one that, you might have dove extra deep on YouTube late night, or one that you keep on coming back to, or,
So the thing that I have still, the reason why it's interesting to me is because it shouldn't be a concern. Well, so favorite would be electric universe theory. Like I still have a lot to learn on that, and I want to dive more into that. But interested in the flat earth thing, because
that's where the mud flood comes in, dog.
It shouldn't even be something like, it's like, why is it? I don't know. It's just interesting to me because I can't really write it off.
So the thing with flat earth, we had David Weiss on. He's like one of the flat earth guys, and all his points to me necessarily wasn't, oh, the earth is flat, but it was just like, oh, there's a lot of fuckery going on here. And it might not be that the earth's flat, but a lot of these points that they're bringing up kind of like make you scratch your head about false timelines, like resources in Antarctica, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the stuff that gets me, and I love it. Like I said, I don't know. We're probably living in a realm or at some kind of simulation, but I'm not married to any of it.
Yeah. And I love that, exactly, right? Because it could be flat earth, it could be round earth, but like, what if none of this is real? What if it's just a video game that we're existing in, right? Because then it could be both. And we're kind of having an argument whether flat or round, and that doesn't even really matter. So that's why it's still kind of interesting to perceive. But I'm really also big into the secret space program stuff and the extraterrestrials, and I think that has a lot of useful information that we can integrate into our life in terms of what's possible.
Do you think space is real?
Well, then there's another question, right? Because then we're not even talking about space. I would say that when I say extraterrestrials, it might not mean space. It might mean a different dimension layered on top of whatever we consider Earth, or whatever we consider this to be. We might be like multidimensionally existing in the same space. Is the universe real? It seems like, these are all just different lenses, right? But with electric universe theory, you start to see light as information, and basically the entire universe is a living being. And then we can start expanding into, well, is this being living yet or dying? And I think it's interesting when I hear very highly shamanic type people talk about, and from different parts of the earth talk about, that the universe is kind of like an egg that is birthing into something. So we don't even know what's really next. It's like there's way more than we could imagine happening with this universe as a whole, let alone our own lives.